I'm here to address what appears to be a series of serious errors in the zoning application of permit granted to Mr. Roger Alexander for commercial solar array on his property. Across from his Lazy Acres trailer from New Lane was just a little while ago, so I won't go into that, but this is now the old permit was applied as a commercial in the RF or Riverfront District, and it should have had a site plan review. And the reason for that is it was permit that you can see in this packet, and I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's checked off, and it's kind of odd because it's checked off both residential and commercial. But since it says commercial, I would assume that it would, under the old zoning, it says a commercial use. As the contractor, Mr. Stork, said it was always permitted as commercial. Site plan, therefore, it appears to me, in my opinion, that the permit was illegally granted for the first. Talking about the old law, it says a permit expires in 6 months. Excuse me, 6 months if you're applying the old law. It doesn't include any construction on the project until the ditch and power line was dug last week. And that ditch appears to be for the turbine. Of course, the solar array and the turbine are interconnected system. I'm curious why that wasn't discussed. If the old permit was not granted properly or illegally, renewing it seems would also be, it would still new permit. When you look under there, the old permit does say commercial residential. But the new permit doesn't show anything under there. It says solar array, but under the checked boxes, it says nothing about whether it's commercial or residential. Which means, in a sense, it seems to me that's an incomplete permit. As I said, from the old law, the permit lasts in 6 months. You mentioned that there had been considerable investment in construction, but I'm not aware of anything until this place. Maybe things last week, a little shed that I'm not aware of, but it looks like everything.
There's probably in the neighborhood of close to $100,000 worth of investment there. So in my interpretation, construction is the same thing we had with Mr. Shimp. I went to Mr. Shimp's garage and he had all the components.
Right.
In this case, in that shed are all the components that you need for switching and for electrical distribution. So construction doesn't necessarily have to be literal as in putting in the framework. If you are vested by investing and your investment, your product comes in, you have it erected, that qualifies.
But that wouldn't, again, in my opinion, I look at the law and the way this was done, it seems that the original permit never went through site plan review and was therefore illegally granted. That full construction. There have been changes to location size, and now the permit is listed as completely commercial, admitted to by your board. And under the new zoning, you guys had a long discussion. The problems under the new law. The project is not allowed in the RF district. Table 8 shows that the arrays are too large. And here's what kind of baffles me. This came before your board, but if you read our new zoning law, it says that this is a site plan, or not a site plan review use, but a special use permit use. If you look in Table 8 in that little document I handed out there, it says it's, and that is now under the jurisdiction of the zoning board of appeals, not the planning board. So I don't understand why Mr. Alexander came to the planning board.
I can't presuppose what the justification Mr. Bender had. When talking to Mr. Millington, he said, look, this was so far ahead, and I didn't, when nobody knew that all this equipment was there. He is vested, and I had no reason to not extend the permit. I understand your issues with the new law. You could say that it should be addressed literally. When we were going about devising this new law, we said, what would be in the view, anything that would be in the viewscape of people on the water that would be conflictual with would be a nuisance to neighbors. That was the intent of saying no for the Riverfront District. If you look at the application Mr. Alexander was asking for, and you're riding along Route 12, there's a bowl there that really doesn't, for something that is going to be at a 45-degree angle and no more than 10 feet high, it's not going to be in anybody's viewscape. It'll be it may be somewhat problematic to Mrs. Grogan, but our intent was to not deprive people of a decent use to the water. That was, you know, how you construct a law that's going to meet every instance. We have such variable geography here that you'd have a law this deep. And
But my point is, and I understand all that, and I can agree with some of that, but my point is that this came before your board in quite some detail. The video that I looked at was approximately 20 minutes. I know Mr. Brown had, I assume, the writer there has a lot of law issues in it, and he explained all this to Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander said he was willing to go along with the zoning and so on. If that's the case, it's after the fact that you talked to Mr. Millington and granted the permit. I'm curious why this ever came before the planning board at all, that you guys can say, well, this is...
We don't do all the, we do not, and I keep on saying this, we do not do all the investigation prior to the introductory meeting.
Right.
So the guy comes to us just like any other applicant. We don't know all of what he's done. We don't know all of what he intends. You know, there's enough work in this to begin with.
Right.
I'd rather have an individual come to us, speak to us about what their plans are, and then we begin the investigation as soon as we can thereafter.